Morning, everybody. 10 years wiser. So I'm Nilan. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Wise. I've been there at Wise for a decade, hence the title for this presentation, 10 years wiser. More dad jokes coming, so brace yourselves. So a quick introduction to Wise for those of you who don't know what we do before we kick off. Like all great startups, Wise was founded to solve our founders' problem. A problem that they had with cross-border money transfer. You see, this is Christo. He was living in London, and he was sending £1,000 every month back home to Estonia. And that's Taavet, his co-founder, who was living in Estonia and sending £1,000 to London every month. And each time they sent £1,000, they noted about £50 went missing. So when they logged onto the bank and they did the transfer, the bank said it cost £2.50. But when they checked the exchange rate they got, there was about £50 missing at the other end. And even today, I ran this comparison over the weekend. Even today, there's still a decent amount of money hiding in the exchange rate. And that's the problem they founded Wise to solve. Hidden fees in the exchange rate. And you fast forward to today, almost a decade later, and we've built out the infrastructure for the world's money. And we solved the problem for moving money across borders with our 3 products. Wise Transfer, the most convenient and cheapest way of moving money internationally, the Wise Account, the world's best international account, and our Platform Enterprise product that takes those 2 products and embeds them directly in banks. We're live in over 60 banks and enterprises. Okay, enough about Wise. That's context. Let's get back to this presentation. So, a decade's a long time. Lots of things change over that period. For those of you from the UK, we've been through 4 prime ministers. This was my favourite, for sure. It's a joke. We've also lived through a global pandemic, something 10 years ago none of us thought we'd go through. And 10 years ago, Wise was blue, and we just did transfers. And this is me when I joined. I think I'm the one with the red hat at the bottom. I think we were about 2 years old then. We were 63 people. And as Emily said, I was on stage at Mind the Product shortly afterwards. And I made 2 pretty bold statements. Number 1, proper deja vu now. Number 1 was that evangelism is the biggest driver of our growth. And specifically, back then, more or less 10 years ago, 70% of our users found out about Wise from a friend. Okay, it's pretty cool. Probably easy for a small company, but pretty cool. And there was a second kind of bold statement I made. I said, we work in autonomous, independent teams that focus on KPIs that make a difference to our customers and drive our growth. Okay, second bold statement. I know those of you in the room working for larger companies are thinking, wonder how that scaled. So why not, let's ask ourselves that question. So I'm going to spend the rest of this talk looking at these 2 claims and sharing what I've learned over the last decade in trying to scale word of mouth and trying to scale with autonomous teams. So let's take number 1. 70% of our users found out about Wise from a friend. Now this is a really easy claim to test. So you go back to 2013, Q3, 40,000 customers joined Wise. 70% of them found out about Wise from a friend. What about Q3 2023? 63%. Almost. But that's still pretty damn good. So that's 1 million customers that onboarded to Wise in the last quarter. We now have 16 million customers on the platform. And that's pretty crazy growth. We've gone from moving £250 million a year to over £120 billion. That is 4% of all the world's money moving on our platform. So the next time your boss tells you that word of mouth can't scale to a huge, huge company, tell them it can. So this thing definitely worked and definitely supported us in achieving our growth. So the next question is, like, how do we do this? So I'll try and share what I've learned over the last decade in scaling through word of mouth. It all starts with one very simple question that you should all ask yourselves. What would it take for my customers to recommend my product? Like, how good does it need to be that they're going to stop somebody and say, hey, you know what, you've got to use Wise? And you figure out the answer to this question by asking your customers. Okay, for most of you in the room, this question is probably very familiar. It's called the NPS, or Net Promoter Score question. I'm not going to take you through this, but you're probably familiar of using products and seeing this question, would you recommend us to your friends, and a scale from 1 to 10. Just taking you through the theory. Basically, if someone gives you a number between 1 and 6, the theory goes, they go around telling everybody, just don't use the product, it's not that great. If they give you a 9 or a 10, they're like, oh my God, you've got to use this product. And if they're a 7 or 8, they're like, meh, like, not really, didn't really make a difference to my life. Over a decade of measuring NPS and looking at our customers' behavior, we saw something pretty interesting in the data. People don't recommend that much when they're giving you between a 1 and a 5. But if you move them from a 5 to a 6, they double the number of people they tell. A 6 to 8, they double again the number of people they tell. And an 8 to a 10, they double again the number of people they tell. So as product managers, you generally are looking for a KPI to optimize. Maybe you pick conversion rate. And say you move your conversion rate by 10%, you got 10% more customers. It's pretty cool. You move your NPS. Every single customer that goes through your product is more viral, and hence you get this hockey stick growth. And it's kind of obvious when you think about it, because if you have more people promoting your product saying you've got to use Wise, then don't use the product, then you're going to grow. So this is kind of the secret to product-led growth, and it's obviously obvious. So how do you do this? How do you figure out how to move people from giving you a 5 to a 6, a 6 to a 7, a 7 to an 8? Starts, like all good things in product, by reading customer feedback. And when we sat down and we read our customer feedback, our customers were remarkably consistent in what they told us. They told us 3 things. Make it faster, make it cheaper, and make it easier to use. So price, speed, ease of use. And these 3 things are generally true for most consumer products out there. So a pretty cool thing about these things is you can measure them. You can measure the price. You can measure the speed. You can measure the ease of use. And what we see when we measure them is that we only get advocacy when we're an order of magnitude better than the alternative. So think about this. Banks charge, say, 5% to move money internationally. If we charged 4.9, you'd use us, but you wouldn't tell your mum about us. Banks charge 5, we charge 0.3. So if you're sending £1,000, you save £47 versus your bank. You're going to talk about that, because that's a lot of money. You do that 4 times, you've got almost 200 quid. So 10 times better product. That's kind of what you need to aspire to do on these dimensions that matter, and then you get the word of mouth growth. So everyone's going to go home, back to your office, and like, okay, got to build a 10 times better product. Why doesn't everyone do this? Because it's really, really hard. Because think about it. Like, you've worked really hard building your money transfer product, and you send money in one end, and money turns out at the other end. You're like, whoop, success, it works. Most product managers stop here. But there's like 10% of you who are like really good product managers. So you kind of like prioritize your bugs, you fix your bugs, and you're like, it works, and there are no issues. Okay, cool. And then the 1% at the back, you guys are building a delightful experience for your customers. You're incredible product managers. But that isn't enough to get an NPS of 9 or 10. That's not enough to get word-of-mouth growth. To do that, you've got to create an experience your customers didn't know was previously possible. Something I call building a 10x better experience. 10 times better than anything else on the market right now. And I'll share with you what I've learned about building 10x better products. If you're building something that's 10 times better than anything else in the market, by definition, you're building something that doesn't exist. If you're doing this right, you're not sure if what you're doing is going to succeed or not. You're not sure if it's ever going to exist. As I'm very fond of telling my product managers, if you're not in that state of existential crisis, you're just not trying hard enough. So let's talk this through with a practical example. Let's talk about speed. Cross-border money transfers, been running on the same rail since the 70s, and the gold standard for moving money internationally, 3 to 5 business days. 1970, you went to your bank, you tried to move money internationally, 3 to 5 business days. 1980, 3 to 5 business days. 1990, 3 to 5 business days. Even today, most banks, 3 to 5 business days to move money internationally. But if you talk to customers and you ask them, how quickly would you like your money? They'd say instantly. And this is quite hard to do, so let's try to work this out. So if you're moving money from, say, the UK to the US, and you want it to happen instantly, well, the pay-in from the customer to our bank in the UK has to be instant. All the KYC, anti-money laundering checks need to happen instantly, and the payout in the US needs to happen instantly. So you can probably optimize all the checks in the middle. That's an engineering problem. But how do you get the money in and out really, really fast? What's the fastest way of moving money in and out in the UK? Well, there is an instant way of doing that in the UK. You just need a bank account here at the Bank of England. And we kind of realized this when I joined Wise, actually, about 6-7 years ago, that instant mattered, and to get to instant, we needed a bank account here. One does not walk into the Bank of England and ask for a bank account with your passport or your driver's license. In fact, the Bank of England was only giving out bank accounts to the 4 major settlement banks for very good reason. Because if you plug directly into faster payments in the UK, you kind of have this like policy manual and compliance checks you need to run through, because you have the potential to bring down the UK's payment system if you do this wrong. It took us about 3 to 4 years of lobbying the government, David Cameron's government at the time, to create the regulatory sandbox to enable fintechs to get access to the underlying payments infrastructure. It took 4 to 5 years to actually build the integration into faster payments. And today now, money moves into and out of the UK instantly, and we're able to hit speeds of 60% instant. Across all our volume, 60% of it moves instantly. That's £6 billion. I haven't yet found another institution moving money, that amount of money, that fast. And it's not just the UK. We've had to replicate that in Europe, in Singapore, in Australia, and in Hungary. So that's how we got to a 10 times better product. That's how we get to advocacy. That's how you get to high NPS. That's how you get to sustaining word of mouth. But that isn't all of the story. You see, when customers recommended on price, speed, and ease of use, when we read their feedback over time, we started seeing them talk about Wise and recommending Wise for a completely different reason. They talked about Wise and recommended us for our mission. Here's our mission. Money without borders, instant, convenient, and eventually free. And we were a bit shocked when we stumbled on this, because our mission is the reason why, it's the reason why I come to work, it's the reason I've worked at Wise for over a decade, because I'm passionate about making the world's money move for almost nothing, instantly and cheaply. But do our customers care? I mean, our customers, they just want cheap transfers, don't they? They don't really care about why we're moving money internationally. But that all changed about 6 years ago when we sent our mission out to our customer base by email. And I like to think of this one as the world's worst marketing email. So we just shared our mission with our customers. It didn't have a call to action on it. It didn't have a price. It didn't even have a button on it. And we shared with them what we stood for. We acquired more customers through that email being forwarded on to other customers than any other form of marketing we'd ever done. But more importantly than that, we got this insight that our mission resonated with a subset of our customer base. And maybe we could harness that to get them, our customers, to help us achieve our mission together. So let's take a step back. Our mission, make the world's money move instantly, conveniently, and eventually free. How could we make a massive step change towards it? How can we take a massive step change towards removing hidden fees from the market? What would be cool is if we could change the law to make it illegal for banks to hide fees in the exchange rate. That would be really, really awesome. So about 4 years ago, there was a piece of legislation going through Parliament, the PSRs, Payment Services Regulation. And in there was a clause where we tried to insert, which said it's illegal to hide fees in the exchange rate. And we got our customers to write to their MPs to ask them to vote for this change. It was quite cool. You can kind of figure out, we knew where our customers lived, we knew who their MPs were. If they opted into supporting us in campaigning, they got an email with a button they could push to send an email to their MP asking them to vote for this change. Pretty cool. And we all turned up at Parliament together, set off a bunch of balloons, and we failed. So legislation didn't work. It didn't go through. But something cool happened in Europe. We managed to get this legislation passed in Europe as part of CBPR2, where it is now illegal to hide fees inside the exchange rate in Europe. And this has had a huge impact. We saved our customers over £1.5 billion in hidden fees, which is pretty awesome. So summarizing, you can scale a business to huge scale through word of mouth. There's a recipe for it. It's just really hard to do. You've got to build a 10 times better product. A product that's 10 times better than anything else in the market. To do that, you're in the space of doing stuff that no one else has done before. This is really hard work, difficult work, but incredibly valuable for your customers and actually for your shareholders. If you do this right, there's a way in which your customers will support you in doing that and help you get there faster. And if you put that all together, you'll end up with word-of-mouth growth. So word-of-mouth growth scales. It's scaled so far for the last decade for us. There's no reason for me to think it won't continue to. Okay, back to claim number 2. This is the spicy one. We work in autonomous teams. Is this one still true? I was looking back through my slides from Mind the Product 8 years ago, and I found this one in there. I was pretty humble back then. I said, the world's best companies run in autonomous teams. Because back then, Spotify ran in autonomous teams, Airbnb did, and Wise did. I'm not sure if you've seen the news, but Spotify's kind of now moved away from its squads and tribes model. It's got big bets, which come a bit top-down, so it's iterated a little. Brian Chesky's been very public in saying that he sees himself as the editor-in-chief of Airbnb, and increasingly is concentrating decision-making at the top. So what about Wise? Do we still work in autonomous teams? Newsflash, we don't. In fact, I don't use the word autonomy in public anymore. It's just like incredibly confusing, because what does it mean? Does it mean I can do whatever I want? Like, it's very hard to interpret. What I do use is the word empowered. So we do work and continue to work in highly empowered teams at Wise. And over the last decade, we found the limits in doing so. So you can imagine there's some real challenges in scaling a business with highly empowered teams. How do you set and keep budgets? How do you do cost control? How do you maintain quality consistently? We're a regulated financial services business. We got licenses in over 50 countries. Risk management and controls are very real. How do we do that at scale? We've been public for over 2 years, listed on the London Stock Exchange. How do you communicate your strategy and your forecasts to the market? And probably most importantly, how do you scale accountability? Good questions. Before I get on to answering some of them, I'm not going to go through all of them. Let's talk through what's worked well. So when I talked to my team, telling them I was going to be coming here, they said, "You've got to tell everyone the story about what happened in Singapore." So let me talk you through the story of what happened in Singapore. About 4 years ago, a regional expansion PM, who's responsible for taking Wise to new markets, came up to me and said, "Nilan, we've got the license for Singapore." It was amazing. It was amazing. That's really good news. He said, "There's one problem." I said, "What?" He said, MAS, the regulator, they said, we need to physically meet every single customer before they can send money on Wise. I was like, what? So you've got to physically meet every single customer. I said, have you come back and explained to them, you don't need to do this in the UK, you don't need to do this in Australia, you don't need to do this in the US. They said, no, if you want to send money out of Singapore, you need to meet customers. I said, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I talked to Jack from the verification team, and he's up for going to Singapore for a bit. We got 4,000 customers on the wait list. And he's going to start inviting them in. Okay. So Jack went out to Singapore and started meeting customers and checking their documents. And it was a really crap experience. Like, you went through the app, and at the end of it, it said, book an appointment, right? And our customers hated it. But we didn't get them to complain to us. We got them to complain to the regulator. And after a year of lobbying, we got the world's first. Take a selfie, take a picture of your KYC documents, your Singaporean ID, and you could send money out of Singapore. Now, if I, as Chief Product Officer, was going to say, we're going to launch Singapore in 2 years' time, it's going to have this cost, and it's going to be entirely digital, I'll be making it up. The only person that could make that happen is the product team. The only way they could make that happen is using their local knowledge, and on the ground, the timing by which that happened is completely out of our control. But by creating an environment in which that type of thing can happen, we created an incredible amount of value for our customers in Singapore, and we launched a product that was unique. So these highly empowered teams enabled us to differentiate, create a huge amount of value, and create a huge amount of growth. Let's move on to talking about the Wise account. So this is the team that launched the Wise account. In here is one of our first product managers who joined Wise straight out of university. And after a couple of years of talking to customers, he realized customers didn't only have a problem sending money, they had problems receiving money as well. So if you're a small business and say you're in the UK and you've got a customer in Australia, the way you get paid is you send them an invoice and you put on there your UK account number, your SWIFT code. And 3 to 5 days later, some money turns up in your account. And you're not sure, like, is that the right? You invoice them $50 Australian and you end up with, like, how many pounds? You're not sure it's the right amount. What would be cool is if you could invoice them in Australian dollars and keep it in Australian dollar balance, maybe pay people with that balance. But to get an Australian bank account as a UK business, you need to get on a plane, you need to fly to Australia, You need to incorporate a business in Australia. You need to take all those documents. You need to go to a bank, and then the bank will give you a bank account in Australia. With Wise, you can do that with 3 clicks. And you can get an Australian bank account, a Swiss one, a US one, a European one, a UK one. It's a killer feature for small businesses. 10 times better than anything else that exists. It's got £10 billion in assets. But that all came from an insight a product manager had when talking with a business. Again, top down, I couldn't say, this multi-currency account of Wise, it's going to be huge in like 3 or 4 years' time. I couldn't say what we needed to do that. That had to come bottom up. And again, it created a huge amount of value for us and for our customers. And the last example I talked through is Pay with Wise. This came from an engineer who, again, talking to customers, realized they didn't just want to get paid through their bank details, they want to be able to accept card payments. And card payments cross borders are really expensive, and we're uniquely placed to solve that. And this is live now in UK and Europe. So what's there to learn from this? Empowering teams has enabled us to move fast. Our strategy isn't set top-down, it's set by the teams closest to the customers who are able to have the insights and uniquely able to execute against them. There's no way I could say, get the Singaporean license in 6 months. Like, who the hell knows when that's going to happen? And my role is to give the team air cover to be able to work in that way. So let's get to the exciting bits. What's not worked? What's had to scale? Let's start with the obvious stuff. In 2013, we were 63 people, and these are our teams that we're working in. And every quarter, the teams would set their plans, get feedback on their plans, and then build it, and then retro, and do it again and again and again. And looking back, one of the drivers of our success is every month that team would sit down with me or with Christo, one of the founders, and they get asked, what did you ship for our customers this month? And what was its impact? And that accountability and helping and unblocking them when they needed unblocking definitely was critical in our growth. But how does that scale to 5,000 people? Every month I can't sit down with every team. That's not going to work. So we've grouped ourselves into tribes around our teams. So 3 major tribes: global products, where our products live; regional expansion that takes Wise to new markets; and servicing tribe that supports our customers and our operations teams. And within those tribes, you'll find our squads. So in products, Wise Transfer, the account, and our enterprise product. Regional expansion, this is geographically distributed. We have 3,000 people across Europe, 1,000 in the Americas, and 1,000 in APAC, localizing and taking Wise to new markets. And then our servicing teams as well. Every quarter, the squads sit down and go through their plans and they get feedback. Every month, the teams demo within their squads, and the accountability is at the squad lead level. And we have ways in which this works and scales. What about quality? And this is definitely something we struggled with. How do you maintain a consistent level of quality in a highly distributed organization? And we didn't, right? So we've definitely had quality problems over the years. So I did what all good CPOs do when they've got quality problems. I hired a VP of design, and had an awesome one, Josh. And Josh worked at Apple and Airbnb, and I said, Josh, Apple's got these really great products, incredible quality. What are we doing wrong? He said, the thing about Apple is it's got this incredible product leader there, and you're not Steve Jobs. And we talked about this a bit, and I realized there's something in this feedback. In that, I don't think my teams need to hear my opinion on what quality is. That's how I'd run. I don't understand why my opinion matters more than anyone else's. But I learned that in me not setting the bar on what good quality is, no one set the bar on what good quality is. So we started sessions called Walk the Product, where every 2 weeks we take a different part of the product, not a new feature that was shipped, but a highly trafficked part of our product that our customers use every single day, and we go through it together as a team. And at the end of the session, everyone would just write down bugs and feedback. And at the end of the session, the PM would read back, we've heard this feedback and these bugs. These ones we're going to fix immediately. These ones we'll do at the end of the quarter, and these we're not prioritizing. And then they come back and they demo in a quarter the fixes. And this is actually a live picture from one of these Walk the Product sessions. As you can see, this one's going particularly well. I feel sorry for the PM in the picture now, but anyway, let's move on. Lastly, just in wrapping up, what about strategy? How do we communicate what 60-plus teams are doing out to the market? How do we communicate that internally? A strategy, I think of as storytelling in your product. Storytelling that supports your forecasts, story that supports your strategic and competitive positioning. And the way we've done that is we've had to develop this frame, a frame for talking through our products, our KPIs, our strategy, and our forecast. And I've had to build a team that helps manage this, our product operations team at Wise, that iterates this. Now, you think about this, in every other product company, or most other ones, the strategy is set top-down. It's really easy to do, because I just write down and say, this is our strategy, and that's it. Here, somehow, I need to synthesize what 60-plus teams are doing, figure out which bits are actually winning, which bits are losing, and turn that into a consistent narrative for the market and internally. And that's actually much, much harder. And it's a muscle we're still developing. So, to wrap up, lots has changed over the last 10 years. Plenty has stayed the same. Word of mouth is a channel that all of you can use to scale your product to millions and millions of customers. Autonomous teams, they need tweaking to scale. And in closing, I'll share a story about a table tennis table. How many of you work in startups? Raise some hands. Cool, for you. Keep your hands up if you've got a table tennis table. So we were a startup, I don't know if you still are, and we had a table tennis table. And there's a point that comes in your startup journey when the table tennis table goes. And it may be because you've run out of space, it may be, I don't know, for whatever reason, but our table tennis table went. And at this point, you'll start getting messages which are like, it's all over, right? We're going to stop growing. Our customers won't talk about us anymore. I'm like, why? Because we don't have the table tennis anymore. But there's something in here, because when you're growing fast and you've got this incredibly strong culture, it's very hard to know, to split test basically, to know the table tennis table matters or doesn't. And actually, do autonomous teams actually matter? And something that helped me on this journey is our customers don't care about autonomous teams. They don't care how we run. They only care about the speed with which we achieve our mission. And if highly empowered teams help us do that, we should do that. But if being top-down and giving a shit about quality from the top matters, we should do that instead. So, in closing, when I look forward to the next decade, I'm not sure if word of mouth will scale. I'm not sure if we're running in highly empowered teams. But I do know as long as we stay true to achieving our mission, we will succeed. Thank you very much. Onwards.